Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Horse's Mouth Live. Today, we will be discussing the 5 myths about generative AI that are holding financial advisors back. I am joined by Sean Bailey, editor-in-chief at Horse's Mouth and the leader of the AI-powered financial advisor program, which helps advisors get up and running, implementing these powerful AI tools into their practice. Sean has spent over 2,000 hours working with AI models, and today he's going to be talking about some of these common generative AI myths, that keep advisors back from using these tools and experiencing the benefits that they provide. So, Sean, I'm wondering if we can start and kind of get a broad picture of the state of adoption among financial advisors with these generative AI tools.
Thanks, Doug, and hi, everyone. Yeah, this adoption issue is really very interesting to me because I'm focusing on what the word adoption actually means. So, based on surveys Horse's Mouth has done, and based on a recent survey by the Fed and Vanderbilt University, um, adoption at one level would be considered very high. We have Horse's Mouth survey showed that 53% of advisors have used AI at work. Okay. And that is how the Fed defines adoption as well. And they're looking at the uptake of generative AI in the context of the uptake of personal computers and then later on the internet and email. And so the rates of adoption right now for generative AI over the last 2 years are higher and faster than adoption of the PC or email. But, and for Horse's Mouth, we found the same thing. About 53% have used it at work. But here's the thing. If you, earlier in history, if you bought a personal computer, okay, that means you're using it. Okay, back in the early days, a desktop computer could cost $3,000 to $5,000, right? The people who were the early adopters, had floppy disks and were enthusiasts and were using it. They got the computer, they made the investment, they were definitely using it. Then along comes the internet and email. People get an email address, they're starting to use it. It's easy, right? But with generative AI, because there's so little friction to quote unquote adoption or usage, right? All you need to do these days to say you have used generative AI is to, go to, ChatGPT.com, which is run by OpenAI, or go to Claude.ai, which is run by Anthropic, or go to Gemini. Gemini, that is the Google, or you even use the Google search engine. They can kind of give you a little bit of a generative AI experience. All you need to do to use those things is just sit there and type in some things. And then, quote unquote, you have used it, right? There's no friction there. And so the fact that we have 53% of people say they have used it seems high, right? But to me, the true understanding of what adoption and usage means is to use it as a co-intelligence in your work every day, because that's really what it's designed for. And this is where there's a huge divergence between the national surveys and what we're finding at Horse's Mouth. We're seeing around 12% of advisors using generative AI every day. If you're using it every day, and as I think every advisor should be, okay, you get it. You see the power of this tool and you're bringing it into your workflow. But right now, we have 35% of all advisors, this was our Horse's Mouth survey as of last June, aren't using it at all, okay? 53% are using it a few times per month, okay? So if you're using it a few times per month, you're really not using it, because to me, well, the Federal Reserve would mark that as adoption, and I'm saying it's a very low value adoption if you're just using it once or twice a month. It indicates to me that you probably haven't really learned how to use it yet. You haven't had the scales fallen from your eyes and you can see the true power of these sort of things. So that's a key thing that I'm focusing on these days, is to try and first understand the difference there, and then see, okay, that's 88% of advisors who are not using it, or barely using it. And so to me, we still have a long way to go in terms of getting our industry on board with really enjoying the benefits of generative AI tools.
So why only 12% of advisors using it on a daily basis, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think we're talking about some myths around generative AI, and so one of the myths that I'm exploring right now is this idea that people think generative AI works like a search engine. Okay, and that is completely wrong. But it is a perfectly natural response after having been, introduced to Google in 2004, 2005, whatever. People have been, happily entering query terms into the Google search box and getting search results. And so this is a problem with generative AI, because many advisors, I think, have attempted to use generative AI, and they've been kind of underwhelmed by the results. And the reason for that is because the typical Google search term is about 2 words, sometimes 3, 2 to 3 words. So if your framework for how to use generative AI is the manner in which you search on Google, then you're going to turn to generative AI and you're going to enter a couple of words and hit the button and see what comes back. And you're going to be underwhelmed, because you're going to look at it and it's not going to be very good. And so what we have here is the fact that generative AI is dramatically different than a search engine, but people are confusing them. And so people need to learn how to use AI properly, how to communicate with it. And that means you may have heard the term prompting. is prompting and prompt engineers. It sounds a bit maybe too complex. What people really need to simply understand is how to have a conversation with an AI model that is totally different from a search engine. That typically means writing these queries, these prompts that are structured, and we'll talk more as we go along here today. But they, going to be around 15 to 30 words. Mine are even much longer than that. But you'll only see the real power of a generative AI tool when you understand that it's not a search engine and you're not to treat it like a search engine. That is a key thing that people need to understand in order to start moving down the path to becoming, what I would say is AI, becoming what I would say would be, AI literate, so to speak.
Okay, do you have an example for us of maybe like, the same task, one you're using like a search engine, one you're using an AI model,
Yeah.
and how it would differ between the two?
So, I can use one, based on, case study from one of our students in the AI-powered financial advisor program, which we'll just mention. We're doing these live streams leading up to our next class. We had more than 30 advisors trained in July, another 30 in August. And we're kicking off another group on October 24th. So we'll see, where are we going with that?
The example of
right, the example, yeah. So for one of the people from our previous classes, had a great example, and it would be this. Suppose you have a client, long-term client coming in, and you're going to be discussing the fact that the client has sold an apartment complex, and so he's got a liquidity event, right? So if you went to Google and you typically acted like a Google searcher, you might say, apartment complex sales proceeds or something like that, right? Most people enter a few words on apartment sales, proceeds, apartment sales proceeds. Yeah, 3 words, right? Whatever.
keywords, right? The keywords.
The keywords, right? Yeah. And what you'll get back is a bunch of sponsored links. I just did this early this morning. You get a bunch of sponsored links about, 1031 exchanges and websites that want to tell you how to get top dollar for when you sell your apartment complex, and not very relevant or spot on. Now the advisor could start scrolling those results and clicking through the pages and reading the pages that Google has served up as good top hits, and try and find something that might help you inform your meeting that you're going to have with this client who is in the middle of having this big liquidity event selling this apartment complex. Right now, you could turn to generative AI, and you would actually structure a prompt. You're going to now engage the AI model for a little bit of pre-meeting research, and maybe even ultimately how to set up an agenda for the meeting. And so you would do something like invoke a role where you would say, you're an expert, financial planner and investment manager who has worked extensively with clients that have had, significant sales proceeds from the sale of commercial or private real estate. Okay, you've just invoked a role in a very, detailed way. Okay, so you would say that's the role. Okay, then the task you would say is, I have a client coming in tomorrow who has recently sold a 30-unit apartment complex. I think the proceeds from the sale are going to be, 2 million or more. And we want to have a robust conversation about what are the various options he has for moving forward with the proceeds of this planned sale. And so that is the task, right? And then you're going to say to the AI model, to get the best results, ask me questions as we go along, because at the end, I want this fleshed out into a full meeting agenda for my meeting with this client. So that is the prompt. And, that's probably, it's probably pushing 30 words in there, those 3 sentences. And now what I've done is, I've invoked a role of expertise. I have gave the AI model its task, right? And then I've asked it at the end, we need a format, okay, which is going to be a meeting agenda. And we had an advisor do this, and he had a meaningful back and forth conversation with his AI model that was really opening up his eyes to some other things to discuss with the client. There were a few top level things that he knew for sure he would bring up, but the AI model was really going more deeply and identifying some other interesting aspects that the advisor hadn't thought of. And he asked some additional questions. And then at the end, he said to the AI model, okay, now I want you to output this as a draft agenda for my meeting tomorrow with the client. And so he did. The AI model produced an agenda that the advisor modified and shared with the client, and had a hugely successful meeting. In fact, this long-term client said it was like the most successful meeting they'd ever had. He was extremely enthusiastic about the depth of the conversation. The advisor himself was hugely pleased as well. So you see there, 3-word search engine that got you, basically nowhere, or not really too far down the path, versus engaging the AI model, invoking this expertise, and having, thoroughly fleshing out the pros and cons of, what might be done with the proceeds of this sale. That led to, a very good outcome for the advisor and the client. So that would be a good example of AI, search engine versus AI, right?
Okay. Well, let's move on to the next myth, which is that, implementing AI requires extensive technical knowledge. What's going on there?
Yeah, I think it's just people hear AI and they think that it's technology. And the search engine. I think I kind of covered this to some degree here with the search engine aspect of things here. You just need to learn how to communicate with it. Okay, and so it doesn't take extensive computer knowledge at all. In fact, the most powerful thing that we realize as we start to get involved with generative AI is that, I can make this computer I can make this model through my computer do all sorts of hugely important and complex things. And I don't need to know how to program it to get it to do these things because it understands my English language. I can write to it. I can even speak to it. It can write and speak back. That is what's that is what's revolutionary about this whole thing. And no expertise or no significant expertise is required. We'll get into some learnings that you do need to have, but they're the most valuable learnings you'll probably ever have when it comes to using a computer is to learn how to communicate with one of these AI models because they can do so much for you. So that's the thing. Up until now, there was computer language, right? COBOL, Fortran, C++, Unix, Python, JavaScript, Java. The list is quite extensive of what computer programmers have learned over the last 50 years. They needed to know how to know this language in order to get the computer to do something for them. Now, AI language is the computer code, your natural language. It's called natural language processing. That's what's one of the huge and amazing aspects of this is that we can communicate in our own native tongue with the computers, and the computers can respond to us in our native tongue, and we can understand. And that is just like, as the kids say, pow. That's unbelievable. And so it doesn't require extensive technological knowledge at all.
Yeah. So how would you define, basic AI literacy for advisors?
Well,
Prompting.
yes, prompt knowing a formula for a framework for how to communicate with these models is what I would say is constitutes AI literacy. Meaning, like in our class, we teach role, task, format, and context, tone, and questions. Okay, it's like a two-part formula that people learn. In my free webinar, which is at horsesmouth.com/chatgpt, I give you the most basic framework, role, task, format, and then in our AI-powered financial advisor program, which is 8 hours of training over 4 weeks, I give them a much deeper formula for how to use these models. It's like, so you have to have some framework to be successful. You have to have some framework for understanding the manner in which you are going to communicate and even ultimately command. I mean, you are in control here. You're the human in the loop. You're commanding these very powerful computers, this computer programs, to do what it is that you want them to do. And this framework is what I would say, having some sort of framework would indicate that you have achieved a level of AI literacy. That's what I would say.
And do you recommend people just start trying? Just give it a try?
Well, yeah. Well, yes. Once you understand that you want to, at a minimum, to get good results, you'll invoke a role, right? Meaning you'll tell the AI what persona you want it to act as, right? I mean, suppose you're teaching your kids, you're now a soccer coach or something like that, and you don't have any real knowledge of how to teach, 12-year-old soccer. You would go onto the AI and you would say, act as an experienced youth soccer coach with 15 years experience. That would be the role. Okay. The task. We're about to have our first team practice of these 10 to 12-year-olds who are on my soccer team. I need you to create a age appropriate, skill level appropriate practice plan for this soccer team that I'm going to be coaching. And I want you to, all right, so that was the task. I invoked the role, the task, and then the format is, I want you to produce the plan in bullet point format so it all fits on one page, and I can either put it on my phone or carry it around in a piece of paper in my pocket. So that's role, task, format. All right. You understand that. If you can do that, you can do that on your own. You're going to get somewhere. Okay. And by the way, you're going to get places you never would have imagined. And if you'd just gone to the search engine and you said, 12-year-old practice plan for 12-year-olds playing soccer, who knows what you would have gotten on Google. But you'll get something, you'll get something very good. By anybody can go to these AI models, and when you understand the role task format framework, then you're going to get some decent results.
Yeah, if you've been underwhelmed by AI output in the past, I recommend you try again using that format Sean just gave you, and see what comes back. I think you'll be pleasantly um, surprised.
Definitely.
But okay, well, let's move on to the next myth, which is that using AI tools violates client privacy or regulatory compliance. And I know in the webinars you've given, Sean, we've definitely heard
Sure.
this is a question we get about that. What are some of the main concerns from advisors regarding AI and compliance?
Well, I mean, first of all, compliance hovers over, many advisors' lives and activities. I've been in this business almost 25 years now, and so I've heard all the downside about compliance, the anti-business department or whatever they want to call it. Naturally, it makes sense for people to say, "Oh, what's compliance going to think about this?" Back this summer, I was interviewing an RIA compliance consultant who said that generally that they don't have too many issues with it at this point, except for one thing, and it's so obvious, and this is what makes all the difference in the world. You're just going to protect your client's personal identifiable information. In that example I gave before, where the advisor had a very fruitful conversation with his AI model about potential investment options relating to the client who's sold an apartment complex, right? He never used that client's name, and he didn't need to, because they weren't searching for highly specific facts or anything like that. And they were looking for, having a meaty conversation about possible investment options, right? So that approach is going to work in a situation like that.
So basically, you just use the same best practices you would use in other ways in terms of keeping things confidential with the AI tools.
Yes, and you can take an additional step and pay $5 or $10 a month more for your AI model. And by the way, we always recommend pay the $20 a month. These tools, you're going to get the best, most updated features and data within your AI model when you're a paid subscriber. Okay, and so you pay that for sure. But if you pay $5 or $10 more a month, you get on the business level. And in the business level, there's in the terms and conditions, it says, we will not, for the business or enterprise level programs, we will not use your data to train our models. So you get this sort of additional privacy protection there. But the key thing is just simply, you can use these models in so many ways, but you don't have to give up anybody's personal identifiable information, and so you don't. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Now, naturally, I was talking with somebody today who said that their firm has given them all access to Copilot, which is the AI model that is in Microsoft 365, which is built on ChatGPT, and so these these models can be effective, but your key thing is you're going to want to always be clear with compliance. That we don't want anybody violating compliance rules, and so it's like anything else. I mean, there was a long time where certain compliance departments wouldn't let any advisor use Horsesmouth's information. What was the reason? And this was as late as like 2005. What was the reason you couldn't use Horsesmouth? Oh, it's a website. So we know that compliance is capable of, some really screwy logic. So naturally, you got to keep your compliance folks in mind, but protect the personal identifiable information is the key thing. That's it.
Okay, well, next up for the myths is that AI will make people less creative or insightful. So, what do you have to tell people who are, fearful that AI is going to stifle their creativity or their critical thinking?
Yeah. So I'm heavily influenced by the work of Ethan Mollick, who's a professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, professor of innovation. Wrote a very powerful book called Co-Intelligence. I would recommend everybody to read that. In it, Mollick exhorts us to use these AI models as a co-intelligence. What does he mean about that? He means you should invite it into the workplace, invite it into your work tasks. He says anything that takes more than 5 minutes, you should probably first turn to the AI model, have a conversation with it, because you're going to ultimately get better results. Okay. And so it's AI isn't going to make people less creative or insightful, but people who don't use AI models are going to be less creative or insightful than advisors who use AI models. Okay. Um, and so um, the ability of these AI models to be creative has been studied extensively, and they are very powerful. I can't imagine a reason why for $20 a month you wouldn't want to boost your IQ, or what I refer to as your AQ, your action quotient, your ability to get things done, by bringing these models along as a co-intelligence, right? And so they did a study around creativity, and the Wharton School did this. Basically, their MBA students every year in their new product development class are tasked with coming up with ideas for a product. I think the rules are that the product must be targeted for sale to college students, and the price should be $35 or less. Okay, and then the business school students are then tasked with thinking through how many business ideas can they come up with. Um, so that's something they do always. But then ChatGPT came along, and some researchers at Wharton said, okay, we'll have the students do that, but then we'll have some other people use AI to come up with this the very same task that's given to the students. All right, and so ChatGPT generated 200 ideas for products in about an hour. Okay, and really, any individual human would need days and days and days to come up with 200 ideas, right? Um, and so 47% of Chat GPT's ideas were later judged. So you get the speed thing first, right? Chat GPT generates 200 ideas really quickly within an hour. A human would take days and days. Then you have quality, right? 47% of those Chat GPT ideas were likely to be purchased compared to 40% of the ideas from the MBA students. So, 47 versus 40, that's interesting. ChatGPT is still stronger there, right? And then the third thing they measured in this study was the top ideas. And of the 40 best ideas rated by judges who did not know whether the idea was coming from ChatGPT or the student, right? Of the top 40 ideas, 35 came from ChatGPT and only 5 came from students, right? So, but here's the thing, that's demonstrating its power. Anybody in product development, anybody being creative, anybody having a need to be creative, bring AI to the task at hand. You're leveraging its greatest strengths and skills, and you're the one in the driver's seat. You're the one that's figuring this out. You're the one who's prompting the model. You're the one that's determining, whether you want to use the output or not. And so it's not a matter of these models making us less creative or insightful. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about making us more insightful and more creative by being able to collaborate with these tools like any other of the tools we've been using throughout our lives, right? I mean, how much time it take to write a term paper for those who go way back, when you had to write it out by hand, and then you had to type it. And if you made some mistakes, you literally took this like whiteout you took this like whiteout paint that you put onto the paper to correct your errors so you could type back over it. And then the computer comes along. It's like, well, massive savings of time and quality right there. And so we're experiencing the same sort of thing here with AI. None of us would ever go back to typing and using whiteout. And within a few years, none of us would ever go back to not bringing generative AI tools along in our daily workflow to get the things done that we need to get done.
Yeah. What do you think about the example of like a writer's room? Like, all of these like shows, they all get together. They have a room full of writers. They're all coming up with ideas together, and AI is kind of like that writer's room for you, just pitching ideas to you
It's
and
yeah, it's funny.
inspiring you.
It's funny you say that because I actually started using ChatGPT back in 2021. Remember, ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, so we're still not 24 months into this amazing revolution. But I was using an earlier version of ChatGPT. I didn't even know it was called ChatGPT until later on. It was a company called Copy AI, and it was using an earlier version of ChatGPT. And what was amazing is when I went and used it for the first time, I didn't even know to prompt. There were no good instructions or anything, but there was a box, and you sense the area. Here's the instructions. Here's where you would kind of like tell the AI, what you wanted to rewrite or write. Okay, and then you'd hit a button, and it would come back with 7 results. So it was like, to me, it was like having a room with 7 writers who, if I'm in the middle of an editing task or a writing task and hit a roadblock, I could turn to this tool, and not only could I get it to give me a possible solution to the problem I was working out with my writing and editing, it would give me 7 solutions. But here's the thing. It gave me 7 solutions on the screen, but at the top, where the solutions would come down, there was a little drop down, box, and it listed a total of 7 writing tones or writing styles. And so for that one, what I later learned was a sort of prompt or direction to the AI model, I got 7 answers printed to the screen, but I had a drop down box where I could change the tone and get 7 more. And so in essence, the model was actually giving me 49 different answers. 7 times 7, 49, right? That was, yes, that's like having a room filled with writers to serve you. And AI is very eager actually to serve people to get things done when you start to understand the manner in which these things operate in their own kind of individual personalities. They are very powerful and very attentive to wanting to do a good job. And that's why it's so important for advisors to actually learn how to properly communicate with these things, because you'll just be totally amazed at the kinds of things that you can get done when the AI acts as a co-intelligence in your daily workflow and you learn to collaborate with the tool.
Okay. Well, next up, we have the myth that AI can't handle nuanced or emotional aspects of financial planning. So, what do you have to say to those who are worried that the output from these AI models is dry, technical, clinical, and it doesn't handle nuance and emotion?
Yeah, right. This is like one of the huge surprises. And again, with this particular myth, I mean, the truth is the absolute opposite. I mean, we thought, we thought 30 years ago or longer, 50 years ago, that in the future, when we had robots in our lives, they would talk in a very robotic kind of way, no emotion, very very stiff, right? But what absolutely blew everybody away in 2017 at Google DeepMind, when they discovered this thing called the transformer. Um, the transformer allowed these large language models to communicate in a very fluid, human-like way. And so the truth of the matter is that on matters of empathy and emotion, the models are very, very good at being being empathetic. And I've had a number of advisors tell me that they were faced with a challenging client situation, a death in the family, or somebody came down ill, and they needed to respond. And once they had learned a little bit about AI, they knew they could kind of struggle with trying to put the right words together in response to this client situation. But both of them said, "Look, I'm still going to do that, but I first want to go to the AI model, explain the situation. I have a client who has just revealed a diagnosis to me. Here's a couple of things about the client. I want to be able to write back a warm and sympathetic response. Help me come up with a draft email in response to this client." And boom, that's exactly what the AI models did. Um, and in both cases, both advisors said that the reception of, they took what the AI model created, they modified it for them, a little more for their own purposes, and then that was the body of the email response to their client, and in clients, and in both situations, they said the clients were just like hugely happy and moved by the response of the advisor. So, many of us struggle in certain times with coming up with the right words. And so um, you could view these AI models as a word calculator in a way, and you can turn to them in different situations and explain the situation, and you can get a good working draft of something. And these responses can be very nuanced and very emotional. And so, in terms of uh, financial advising in general, you heard me before talk about invoking expertise. And so, um, from an emotional aspect of giving financial advice, you could easily uh, invoke the expertise of a behavioral finance expert who's skilled with whatever the particular task or issue is that you're about to deal with your clients. But invoking a behavioral finance as a framework, you'll be going down a path with your prompts that will give you really quite a lot of good insights on whatever particular task you've given it and whatever the context is of the situation that you're bringing to the AI model. So yeah, they can be very, very good on the emotional front.
But are there any, limitations of AI in this area that advisors should keep in mind? Anything they should be on the lookout for?
You mean in general as it relates to the emotional
Yeah,
aspect? Yeah,
yeah.
I think they can be so good that you want to be sure that what it is you're ultimately sharing with people still really reflects your own style and tones, right? You wouldn't want to be giving them Shakespearean prose when you write a lot more like Hemingway, okay? And so this is one of the things we teach in the class too, is how advisors can customize their AI model so that the model is very familiar with your existing writing style and tone now, okay? And so that then the things that it writes for you, the drafts that it creates when it's collaborating with you, are written in your own personal tone and style, all right? And so what I'm saying is that these things are very powerful. You just need to make sure that what it is you're releasing to the world, that you're the human in the loop, that you're scouring them, you're correcting whatever needs to be corrected, and not sending something out into the world that is in marked contrast with your own writing style or tone. Because then a discerning person might, scratch their head a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you're collaborating with these tools. They're not just replacing what you are doing.
Nope.
You're working with them.
You're the human in the loop.
Yeah.
We say that a lot. You're the one that's responsible for this. This is a tool that you're using. You can't put it out in the world and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, ChatGPT wrote that." So you're responsible for it. And so that's why it's so important for people to understand how to properly communicate with them, so that in fact, what you're ultimately releasing into the world is in total alignment with your tone, your style, your personal values, your goals, your objectives, all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so for advisors listening who maybe are still a little hesitant with using these tools, what's one piece of advice you could give them to help them get started?
Well, I've mentioned it a couple of times already, and that is like you need to understand the framework for how to communicate with the tools. Don't treat it as a search engine. Understand that effective conversations are built around having a framework for being able to communicate and command the AI models to get things done for you in the manner in which you want them done. And so that would be the key thing.
Okay, and then a hypothetical. We've got two advisors today. One starts implementing these AI tools into their practice. The other buys into the myths and doesn't use it. 5 years from now, how do their practices differ?
They're going to be. I think they'll probably be hugely different, simply because these models, in addition to already being very powerful, are giving people the ability to get things done a lot faster. Many writing and research tasks are saving 80% of the time. Like, for instance, that at the top of our session today, I was talking about the advisor having a conversation with the AI model about the client coming in to deal with the question about the proceeds from the sale of an apartment complex, right? Um, uh, that advisor said he probably would have spent 2 to 4 hours preparing for that meeting. And instead, he spent less than 30 minutes with the AI model that ultimately generated, a customized agenda for their meeting that was turned out to be hugely successful. So, advisors 5 years from now who continue to go without integrating the AI models into their practice are just going to be, they're just not going to be in the same place that an advisor who is enjoying the sort of time money benefit that the AI models are producing a dividend in your practice, and you can use this extra time to do greater client engagement, work on other projects, work with your staff, or right. So you're using the time to grow your business, or your other option could be, go home on Fridays, right? Come in for an hour or two, and then get in the car and drive to the mountains or the beach or wherever you go on the weekends, the lake, whatever the case may be. You'll have more time to enjoy life. And I think most advisors who do use these tools will do a little of both. They're going to take some of their newfound time and plow it back into the business, but they're going to take other aspects of that newfound time and, enjoy living the full life. Many advisors, are very busy, but they've reached a point in life where they ought to enjoy life more. And these AI models are going to help them do that too.
Okay, great. Well, to close things up, we do invite you to check out and learn more about the AI-powered financial advisor training program. It starts on October 24th. Go to horsesmouth.com/AI to learn more. And Sean, thank you so much for joining me.